This is homage to St. John Paris. Ah yes, there were winds and the seas arose in the midst of their action. Molecules of air, molecules of water whipped up under the clouds, the whistling, the sound of such an immense rush, the shuffle of feet in cities visited by sand in the midst of those same winds, the smell of distance, of spices, of gold, of the excrement of hereto unknown animals, nourished by unknown vegetables. Caught as though in these gusts in their hearts, men and women, driven into motion, wandered hither and thither, peering here and there, as if a vast voice had called them and drawn them to go and to come, to disperse and to gather, to depart, sometimes forever, only rarely to return as a visitor, half or more of a stranger, to the source of the winds that pulled them or drove them away. How to come home again, when all that the wind brings says, stay where you are, where even if it is bad, it is better than the here and the now that you left behind. The whistling is the sound of the dead, no longer of any use to us. Those who have already done all that they could have gone over. The wind tears us away from them, knowing our own needs better than we know them ourselves, to begin again to begin. Now listen to the winds, they tell of the past, that drive the sails that lead to the unpredictable, unforgettable future.
Whoa.
It's an homage to Max Jacob, who was a very close friend of Picasso, and he died in a concentration camp. And the poem explains some of the circumstances of that. I was severely mistaken in writing to a poet acquaintance that Max Jacob took his own life. By the way, many of these poems are actually imitations of the style of the people who are being homaged. Not all of them, but most of them are an attempt to imitate the style and the themes and the motifs that they develop in their poetry. In fact, it was only and maybe merely his afterlife that he took. And he took it deliberately as a Catholic, which he had become by choice, not birth. After converting to the Church of Rome, he joined the gang of poets and artists on Montmartre in order to sin disgracefully, so he said. It was not for this reason that the Gestapo later arrested him and put him in the concentration camp where he died of lung disease. It was because he had been born a Jew. His conversion therefore completely failed to save his life. I hope my poet acquaintance, who told me that he feels his own work is most like Max Jacob's, does not come to suffer a similar fate. May he continue to enjoy all sins untrammeled, no matter how considerable, without feeling any need for punishment, as did poor Catholic Max. May I too live in hope to do the same, dear merciful God. This is a concrete poem for Apollinaire, and it's just about Zone. Zone, his great poem, which is really the opposite of T.S. Eliot all the way, and it's one of the great poems of the 20th century. Like T.S. Eliot can't see anything good except in the past and bringing the past back. But at least Apollinaire could see that the future contains something, even if it contains terror. So that's that, and this is just like a kid's concrete poem. It's just about Apollinaire, and it's just an apple. Pierre DaDaBaBy, who was a Cubist poet. He was a friend of Picasso too. After a while, they stopped their talking and turned to the right, heel and toe, walking on together in the night. How simply the darkness slipped its noose. The news came over the wire, ending their silence. Soon enough, their footsteps also ceased. They came to the station. The doors were all found closed. The window showed nothing inside. The bare boards creaked. The last arrivals had already departed for the center of the city. No one knew was expected on that exact particular night. The trains arranged silently in the yard, the sound of waiting unfinished. A jet plane left behind a silent trail in the sky. A billion alphabet footmarks appeared upon the internet to mark the day of my friend's birth. My friend here is Warren himself, who called for somebody to write poems for an event for his birthday when he was off in Ottawa. This is homage to Paul Éluard, to whom I feel a very close relation because Paul Éluard joined the Surrealists, and then he joined the Communist Party, and he continued to write throughout those years. And He died as a member of the Communist Party and was buried as a communist. And he was married to Gela for a while, who married Dali and ran off.
Really? I didn't know.
And then he married a woman called Douche who died. And he had kind of a sad life, but he was he's a very touching poet, and I find him. Anyway, I actually tried to imitate his style here. The birds of the lawn, what do they have to do with poetry? What do their wings say about words and things, or words about wings? Even if they catch the rays of the sunset flashing, even if each bird sings, they have already gone lightly to their home in the night, heads tucked under their wings, song unsung, words unspoken under the tongue. Meanwhile, poetry burrows, borrowing the colors of the earth, paying no interest, gone in the flutter of an eyelid, the flutter of a wing, the flattering tongue. This is an homage to Jacques Prévert, who began his career as a writer of film scripts. And he wrote a very famous French film called Enfant de Paradis. And the name of his two books of poetry, two that I know, are Paroles and Histoire, words and stories. And the poem ends with those two words. This is another poem, that mentions Warren here. First you name a thing, a cup of coffee, say, and then some cream to add to it, a bit of sugar, a spoon to stir it with. Whisper the name of lips. Someone drinks, eats, then goes out of doors. The poet rests his head in his hands, quite happily. This is called the making of poems, more like a list of names and deeds. Some years ago, on this very day, my friend was born. Paroles, Histoire. This is homage to Francis Picabia, who was a member of the Dadaist, a flatulent Dadaist playboy with your fancy sports cars emitting various powders decorating the nose, surrounded always with the not quite delicate odor of insanity, a fluvium of feathered armpits, deliberate but not entirely impenetrable, semi-oracular, feverish obscurity, never smelled a hot dog to embellish the otherwise perfect nasal obsession, plastered with parrot feathers, crow feathers, feet fresh blistered from the heat of the beach, a gustatory mendicant, the grim simian grin, murderous repartee with the sunshine, leaving behind the odor of petroleum farts, well-tuned engines, and other sarcastic ejaculations. What a scream! In the gravel courtyard of your semi-famous former mansion in Montmartre, today musicians play some amplified flamenco, and well-dressed drinkers play at bowls, black balls tossed high into the air. In the grassy lane adjacent to this stone-walled courtyard, the strolling tourist comes upon a dark and leafy bower overgrown with branches. I love that because it's kind of medieval, right? Within this darkened grove, there sits immovably a lump of indiscernible matter, almost as tall as a man, as wide and as thick as a man is tall. At first glance, and even afterwards, neither eyes nor fingers can easily discern if this pocked and pitted presence is animal, vegetable, or mineral, a meteorite fallen from the sky, a 12-ton bit of worthless metal slag, or something entirely hybrid, entirely in between. There it sits, disconsolate, hidden, isolate, covered with droppings from the branches, dust, bits of dried leaves, desiccated fronds, the webs of touring insects. Then, some steps beyond the copse in the distance, against the pale, silvery evening sky, the upraised Eiffel Tower, the solitary finger of an iron skeleton. A moment of silent freedom comes upon me, completely inarticulate. Approximate man, approximate monster.